The governor did sign a bill today at an event in Everett, a bill that received a lot of heated opposition in public hearings, and a bill that we covered here at the Center Square, to take away basically city and county officials' ability to decide where and what type of supportive housing they want in their communities for the homeless and for often drug addicted individuals. So this legislation, which is now law, based on today's signature from Governor Ferguson in a signing ceremony that he did in Everett earlier today, that basically requires cities and planning counties within urban growth areas to allow transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, indoor emergency shelters, indoor emergency housing they called step housing in these zones, regardless of whether the city or the county has passed local ordinances in opposition, where they say, okay, we won't say we won't have this in our community, but it's not going to be near a school. It's not going to be near a playground. It's not going to be near, a church with a preschool, that kind of a thing. Now the state is basically taking away the authority for any of that local jurisdictional control for where these places are going to be housed. So here was Governor Ferguson at today's bill signing.
Permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and emergency housing, also known as step housing, support some of our most vulnerable Washingtonians. Expanding it is an important step to ensuring more residents have a safe place to call home. House Bill 2266 ensures that step housing can be built more quickly and predictably all across Washington state. Specifically, House Bill 2266 creates clear statewide standards for permitting, treating these housing types like any other residential housing.
So related to this come efforts to expose how some of these programs that are designed on the surface to help people, that some suggest are making things dramatically worse. So a few days after a video that went viral was posted on X showing a taxpayer-funded tiny house village in Seattle's Inner Bay neighborhood being used as a safe house for drug abuse, the operators of that village then kicked out the nonprofit founder who helped to expose the situation. This was a video, and here you can see part of it, posted by We Heart Seattle founder Andrea Suarez.
Inner Bay Tiny House Village.
And this is the drug house right here for people that do drugs.
What?
So you can come do your drugs. If you're going to do Fetty or something, you come in here and do it. No animals are allowed. And you come in there to do your Fetty. Nobody says anything or anything. And Narcan's up here, but...
What about foil? Are they passing out supplies to do it?
No.
You gotta get that here at home. Wow, what a depressing. Look at this chair. It's like a suicide tank.
Heater. Usually it's full of people.
Really?
Yeah, it's the end of the month. So everybody's running out of money.
Oh, boy.
It's funny because the drug dealers or something, they're in there smoking with people. Nobody's in their room doing fentanyl. They do it there and have a problem. There'll be somebody around close that can deliver the Narcan.
And as you see here, this has shown a resident of the Inner Bay Village tiny home community showing Suarez around the property, focused on an empty tiny home with a few chairs inside. The resident telling Andrea Suarez that this is where other residents go inside to use hard drugs, including lethal fentanyl, often with the drug dealer who, according to the resident, also lives in the village.
People who don't know, the definition of harm reduction is to give, and housing first, is to give people a place to live, to stabilize, put the oxygen mask on so that they can have a better chance at accessing resources, treatment, and mental health care versus a tent. But what we saw there, and what we've always known, is that drug use is allowed inside the tiny house villages, inside the individual homes. And this particular village went to as far as giving a dedicated tiny house that volunteers built. And the whole Hope Foundation, the Hope Factory rather, is, and again, don't hate the player, hate the game, building these tiny houses. They're cute. People sign the walls, welcome home, and then they just often turn into trap houses and drug dens and places to have your friends over and use drugs. And what we saw at this, again, particular village was a designated house for, as you heard the gentleman, the resident say, the dealer often will use with their buyer. And in the name of keeping people alive, never using a loan, making sure people don't overdose and die inside their houses. And it's just really defeating and morally wrong, in my opinion. I don't think taxpayers honestly know that many of these villages are just that. They are not stabilization centers. They're supervised consumption sites. And for argument's sake, just call them what they are. So we're not calling each other out on what it is. And then we can debate as to whether or not we should be funding on property land, public land with public dollars, with volunteer built homes, if they should just be sanctuary places for drug users to use.
So again, We Heart Seattle and founder Andrea Suarez has spent the last 5.5 years cleaning up Seattle parks and other drug-infested areas, and then building relationships with the users. I've been out with her on the streets, and I have seen how she and her team interact with the drug-addicted folks that are on the streets of Seattle. People that many she's gotten to know, that she's watched them die. Even after getting them into housing, in the name of get them into housing and that will save their life. It has not in many cases. She has names of these people on a wall inside the We Heart Seattle office in downtown Seattle, people that have died, people who she tried to help. And, drug addiction is a difficult thing to overcome. But the most difficult part for a lot of people to face in this, she says, is people getting trapped in this cycle. What now this often means for them. And this is, again, difficult to watch and difficult to hear. But if we're not going to do something to really address this crisis and do something to really get at what is the crux of keeping these people trapped in this cycle of addiction, and the officials in the city and across the state really who are supposedly trying to help them need to address that this is the reality for these people and what they're doing to keep themselves in this cycle of addiction.
A very naive minded person who's just like, this is about housing, 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 forgets, because that's not the headline, that this is a drug crisis. And so they're not thinking about that person never gets treatment, and they don't realize that that person has to do sex trade, siphon gas, flip their stamp cards, porch prowl, car smash and grab, retail theft, broken windows in these small businesses. They don't realize, what are they doing all day to get the drugs? They are wreaking havoc in our communities. And the most grim thing I keep hearing over and over again, because things are getting harder to steal. Windows are getting, people are putting cages around the ice cream and cages around the dish soap and cages around the diapers, that people are more and more going to prostitution, Carlene. I mean, people are doing $10 tricks to get an hour's worth of drug. It's rampant. I mean, you go into these parks and say, hey, you trust me, my name's Andrea, we've worked together, Hector, what's the number one thing people are doing out here to get their drug money? And he says prostitution, men and women. And there's perverted people that drive through these parks waving money out of their car, and they know exactly what they're doing when they get in the back of that car or go down the road or go to the massage parlor, that they know that they're doing it so they don't have to steal, that they're not going to be able to boost and fence because, we're breaking those up. And that is the, unintended consequence. Often, you think, well, they're not going to steal, but now they're doing this very dark side of, sex work. And the sex worker activists are like, this is a good thing. And I'm like, it fuels the drug market. It's a supply chain element of the drug market.
So I'm putting up an article today at the centersquare.com Washington's page, but I did reach out to the Low Income Housing Institute, Lehigh. They're the ones who run this Inner Bay Village that we've been talking about today. I got no response. I also reached out to Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's office for comment because she's expanding some of these tiny home villages. No comment. And I reached out as well to the King County Regional Homeless Authority, who has spent a huge amount of taxpayer resources over the last 20 years in the name of helping this crisis, and it has only worsened. Again, I received no response, and I did reach out multiple times starting yesterday in anticipation of reporting on this today. So it is disappointing not to at least receive the courtesy of a response to address a crisis that is not only draining taxpayers across the state, but killing our residents every single day. So that's that one.